Hello and welcome everyone to the Male Fuzz movie news. This is a podcast. I guess it's still a podcast if it's one person. Why not? That's fine. But welcome. So new format I'm trying here. Kind of similar to TV news, except I'm on my own. I'm going to go through the week's movie news. I've got it split into a couple of sections, and I will got a couple of ending bits at the end, obviously, where I'm going to talk about the coming box office, maybe try and make some predictions, do a roundup of kind of the review consensus of the new movies. But you know, if there's a big trailers, we'll talk about those. But I mean, otherwise, we'll get into it, and hopefully, people who are watching live enjoy the show, and we'll get into it. So yes, I feel like there's less of a consistent structure to movie news compared to TV news, just because I'm so used to doing the TV news. Movie news is a little bit more scattershot, so bear with me. We'll sort of form what this new running format is as we go, but we'll give it a try. So we'll start off with the trailers this week. There's two notable ones to talk about, and we have one kind of came with more of a title announcement and a teaser trailer than a full proper trailer, but it's definitely probably the biggest one of the week, which is Godzilla Cross Kong, The New Empire is the title. So I mean, that's just a reveal right in of itself as the title of the next Godzilla King Kong movie. I'm not sure how you pronounce these. I know anime has these titles a lot, this cross thing, where instead of a V's, you have a, property A, X, property B. I think you may just say Godzilla Kong. But the New Empire and the teasers, it was just CGI, and it's just like there's some hint of a villain sitting there all ominous. I have no idea who this villain is supposed to be, and I've seen a good number of classic Godzilla movies, and I'm not sure who they're pulling from here. If it is indeed being pulled from anywhere, this could be a completely original idea, a completely original character. I have no clue, but I am a big fan of Godzilla in general. I love the 2014 movie. I have enjoyed, for the silliness that they are, the follow-ups, King of the Monsters, Godzilla vs. Kong. They're not great movies or even good movies, really, but I had a fun time with them, so if I get at least another one of those, I'll be happy enough. Hey, and if King Kong wants to get beaten like the little punk that he is again, I'm okay with that. Godzilla wins. Godzilla always wins. The title's fine. I think it's interesting moving to a completely different title format. Like, if this is enough of a success again and they do another one, like, it could just stay Godzilla Cross Kong with a new subtitle as we go forward. So maybe that's what they're hoping for, and that's why they've named it this way. Because now this is just what it's called when they're together. But yeah, so that was that. And the other trailer we got that I felt worth talking about was Insidious: The Red Door. This is the 5th Insidious movie. And the notable thing about this one, behind the scenes, is that it's been directed by Patrick, was it Wilson, his name is? The actor from the first couple, who is back as an actor in this one as well, as is Rose Byrne. In a weird way, it's kind of becoming the Fast Five of Insidious, in which all the original actors seem to be coming back. The kid from the first movie is now like 18, 19. He's off to college, all that stuff. And it's how this, horror is still with the family, and the kid now has to sort of face these demons as well, and get into the further, all that stuff. I'm not so sure how I feel about the trailer. It is interesting to be bringing the original cast back, and the 4th movie was a bit of a wet fart, sadly. But I actually really enjoyed the 3rd movie, which was largely standalone. It did have a small connection to the first couple, but it was mostly an original villain. Obviously, it tied in because it had the Lin Shaye character in there, who, according to this trailer, is going to be in this like Randy from Scream 2. It's going. There's a videotape moment in the trailer. You can see them watching a tape of her giving instructions. Uh, so they've squeezed her in there somehow. It's almost becoming ludicrous how they keep finding ways to make sure Lin Shaye's character can pop up. But yes, so uh, the trailer's okay. I always have a tough time with horror trailers unless they're a bit slower, like because there's a lot of quick cuts, there's a lot of loud noises, all the rest of it, and I find it hard to actually gauge how the horror is going to be directed with those sort of trailers. So I will, leave it to see. I mean, I'm happy enough there's another one. It's Insidious is one of my favorite newer horror franchises. As much as I didn't like the fourth one, 3 out of 4 ain't bad by any means. So hopefully the fifth one can get us back to good territory. And if not, then, well, like a lot of horror franchises, there'll just be an easy cut off that you just don't go past. But it looks in line. I'm very curious to see how the directing is, cause since this is his first time. I am very curious about that. So we'll see how that goes. So get into some other news here. I've got one that's just kind of labeled industry because it's not really tied to a movie, but it felt worth mentioning that this ongoing saga that we've had these last couple of weeks with Jonathan Majors is developing again. He's been dropped by his talent manager, as well as his agency. They've both severed ties with him after allegations of domestic violence. And apparently there's more victims coming out and speaking up about past incidents. He, of course, was just in Creed 3 and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. And awkwardly for Marvel, they've already filmed all of Loki Season 2, in which he's a pretty prominent character. So, as we're gearing further towards this, it would seem that they're probably going to end up recasting Kang at some point. But they do have a whole season of a TV show with him already in the can, which, maybe they'll make some big choices to go back and reshoot, but they'd have to reshoot a lot of the season by the sounds of it. So I guess they'll just wave their hands and go, multiverse stuff. He doesn't look like him anymore. Just deal with it and move on. So, but yeah. We will move on then. So, the sci-fi movies up next. So yeah, most of these stories come from Deadline. So if I'm quoting stuff that sounds like it's from an article, it's usually from Deadline. A few of them will be from Bloody Disgusting. But here we go. So Michelle Yeoh is getting her own Star Trek movie. This is actually crossover news from TV because for a long time we were expecting a Section 31 Star Trek TV show. They said it was going to happen. It was going to spin out of Star Trek Discovery Season 2. And it felt like it just kind of went away. Like it just... it just disappeared. Like to the point where we didn't really think it was going to happen anymore. And maybe with Everything Everywhere All at Once, making her kind of reigniting her stardom, maybe it would be tough to lock her down for a show. And that actually seems to be maybe the case. Like perhaps why this has turned into a movie instead of a TV show is because it's maybe unfeasible to like lock her down for a 10 episode season and possibly multiple seasons if it was going to go that way. So perhaps it turning into a 2-hour movie with the possibility of sequels, of course, is just a way to handle how much of a star she is now. But yeah, so Paramount Plus have greenlit Star Trek Section 31, an original movie where Michelle Yeoh reprised her role as Emperor Philippa Georgiou, which she played in the Star Trek Discovery Seasons 1 and 2. So yeah, this goes all the way back to 2018, them wanting to do this, when it was originally sort of confirmed as in development. So, in Section 31, Emperor Philippa Georgiou joins a secret division of Starfleet tasked with protecting the United Federation of Planets, but she also faces the sins of her past, which that's not much of a description. It doesn't really tell us anything other than she's in Section 31. So, we'll see what they do with this. She was definitely a brighter spot, particularly of Season 2 of Discovery. I don't really have much love for Season 1, but Obviously, she's very good, and the fact that they can do something else with her when she has just become sort of a more bankable name again is probably good for them. I would imagine it diversifies the type of Star Trek content they're putting out. It is kind of funny though that this ended up being the next Star Trek, even if it's not a theatrical release. It is kind of funny that this ended up being the next movie when we've been sitting dealing with rumors of what Star Trek 4 from the Kelvin verse might be for ages. Like, is it going to be? Are they going to bring Hemsworth back as Kirk's dad and do some time travel nonsense with that? Are they just rebooting again with the new cast? Like, yeah, all of this, all of it's been up in the air, but here we are. So yeah, that's the Star Trek Section 31 movie, and it's coming. Sounds like a threat, but it's coming. All right. Next up, still in sci-fi, Jessica Biel, who you'll know from a bunch of things, is going to star opposite Zokite Gomez. I might be butchering that name. Who was in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, apparently. They're going to star in a movie called Ursa Major, a sci-fi thriller from twin brother directors Jonathan and Josh Baker, which will head into production this fall. So, Patrick Somerville, the Emmy nominee known for creating Station 11, who also created Netflix's Maniac and HBO Max's Made for Love, wrote the script with Colleen O'Brien and Katie French. The film is set on an Earth-like planet where a mother, played by Beale, and daughter Gomez fight for survival while hiding from a group of relentless hunters, with the added threat of an imminent and deadly storm. Natalie, now a teenager, begins questioning her mother Charlie about who they really are and how they got here and what they need to do to survive. Not a lot to go on there. People do like Station 11, and I did see Netflix's Maniac series, which was pretty good. It had its peaks and valleys, but it mostly was a good time by the end, and I was quite happy that I watched it. So a little bit of talent to it. This sounds like something where, I don't know, like the mother's got a secret about why they're here that she's keeping from the daughter, and probably something that'll make the daughter hate her for a little bit when they find out. It doesn't feel particularly original, but the description's been intentionally very vague, probably because it wants to conceal whatever these secrets are. So we'll see. There's nothing much there to really go on as of yet. So next up, we've got a sci-fi movie called Parallel, starring Daniel Deadwyler, Aldous Hodge, and Edwin Hodge. The film is directed by Kurish Ahara, and it comes from a screenplay by Jonathan Kesey and the Hodge brothers. It's scheduled to come out sometime later this year. It's in post-production. Parallel is a remake of Li Zhang's award-winning Chinese film Parallel Forest that marks the first under Hodge's new banner, the Hodges Brothers Productions. The film tells the story of Vanessa, who takes refuge at her family's lake house to grieve after suffering the loss of her child. Accompanied by her husband, Alex, and his brother Martel, Vanessa attempts to regain her sense of normalcy after a tragedy. But soon after her arrival, she experiences an aberration when she is attacked by a parallel universe's version of herself. Faced with the reality that the multiverse exists, she must reconcile the fact that these parallel gates will either hold the key to releasing her grief or trapping her forever. Yeah, multiverse stuff's all the rage now these days. But what's funny is that I feel like there's the new way of doing the quote-unquote multiverse that I feel is a little different to just a story about a parallel universe. And they're effectively the same thing. Like, I'm not arguing they're not necessarily, but when I watch something like Coherence or something like that, I feel like the story's tackled slightly differently than something where it's about a multiverse where we're getting tons of different versions. Like, I'm not so sure if we're going to be getting multiple versions of this main character or just one alternative, but you can definitely see how this will be used to tell a story about grief and how this other version is suffering from something different. Um, and the metaphor that she's literally fighting herself, like, the idea that her grief has been personified in this evil or angry version of herself that she has to actually fight physically. The metaphors are already kind of writing themselves in my head before, and only from this minor paragraph. So I can totally see what this movie's trying to do even before I've seen a trailer. So on that sense, like, it's got a solid enough premise. I'm not really familiar with a lot of the talent involved in this. That includes the cast, so I have no gauge of quality, but it sounds solid enough premise wise from what it's saying. So yeah. So Vertical acquired the worldwide rights to that, which is kind of the main part of the news there, really. But as always, the more entertaining part for us is mostly going to be reading the descriptions and seeing what's what. So obviously the other big show we have on the channel is a horror show, so it makes sense to have a horror section, and I feel like in general there's probably going to be more horror news items than there are anything else because there's a lot of horror news. So yeah, we'll get into it. So Renfield's out, or just came out, and it's not actually the only Dracula movie coming out this year. We've got The Last Voyage of the Demeter coming out later this year from Universal. It's coming out on August 11th. And the news this week is just that it's been rated R for bloody violence. This comes from director Andre Overdahl, who did The Autopsy of Jane Doe and Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. This is the movie that's basically an adaptation of one chapter of Dracula, the chapter in which the ship that's bringing his coffin to England, like, there's a chapter in the book where it's just like the diary of the captain talking about how weird things are happening and how eventually the entire crew of the ship get killed by Dracula. This is a movie about just that. Which honestly I think is a solid premise. But Renfield also was a solid premise that as soon as I saw a trailer, I lost all hope for that being any good. So I'm not going to get my hopes up necessarily, but I do think the concept for the movie is quite good. So, but yeah, but it's R-rated anyway, so not you'd expect any less, but I could also see them toning it down just for the wider audience. So at least they haven't done that, which is nice. So that's The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Next up, after working together on Split and some other stuff, James McAvoy and Blumhouse are working together again on the remake of Danish thriller Speak No Evil. James Watkins, who directed The Woman in Black, will direct from his script, and it's got a release date of August 9th, 2024. I've not seen Speak No Evil yet. It's on my to-do list from last year. It got a lot of buzz, the original, the Danish film. I know Tim watched it recently, and he said it messed him up sufficiently. Obviously, the two facets to this are just the idea that they're remaking it in English in general, which obviously is something that typically is, like, I get why they do it, but on a personal level, it just feels like a waste of time. More often than not, an English language remake of a movie, especially when it's just happened and they're doing it quite quickly, just ends up feeling like this redundant thing that's usually weaker, much weaker in most cases, to be honest. The other thing here, though, is the talent involved. This is not to say anything ill of James McAvoy, but the director did The Woman in Black, which I thought was pretty dire. So, like, even if I wasn't like writing it off as just a needless remake because I want to see the original movie, the director being attached to it is just like, okay, like any interest I had is gone. But just to flesh this out, in the original 2022 movie, a Danish family visits a Dutch family they met on holiday. What is supposed to be an idyllic weekend slowly starts unraveling as the Danes try to stay polite in the face of unpleasantness. That is very vague and doesn't really give much away. I know it's meant to be particularly hard-hitting, whatever goes on in the movie. Obviously, I've not seen it. I don't want to spoil it for myself, but um, that is the American remake of Speak No Evil, which is coming out next year. So very good. Next up, Jonathan Milot and Carrie Mournian's home invasion action thriller Becky, which came out a couple of years ago, is getting a sequel, and it's coming out next month. Bizarrely, it's called The Wrath of Becky, so it's not even called. I mean, I guess it's got Becky in the title still, but like, I did see this actually, the first one. It was Kevin James was this home invader, and little girl Becky had to like turn into like a violent little badass to try and save her parents or whatever. Honestly, I don't remember a whole lot about it. I kind of just put it on and did stuff while it was on. It didn't really capture my attention, honestly. But this is Lulu Wilson, who's the star. And apparently also in this one is Sean William Scott. I don't even remember the last time I saw a Stifler in something, but he's going to be in the sequel to Becky. So, yeah, in the film, 2 years after she escaped a violent attack on her family, Becky attempts to rebuild her life in the care of an older woman, a kindred spirit named Elena. But when a group known as the Noblemen break into their home, attack them, and take her beloved dog, Diego, Becky must return to her old ways to protect herself and her loved ones. I love how they're phrasing this like it's a history of violence, but she's probably like 50 or something now, the actress, but it's still kind of funny to me. So, yeah. The Wrath of Becky. Doesn't have quite the same ring to it as The Wrath of Khan, does it? But there you go. That's that. Oh dear, how you doing in chat, everyone, if we're watching this live? Hopefully some of these sound interesting. Sticking with horror, there's a bunch of horror stuff actually. So we're getting a prequel to another horror series, one that I watched all of a couple of years ago, and that is Hell House LLC. This is at least up until now, it's been a trilogy of found footage movies that I don't think they were made for Shudder, but I think they were on Shudder when I watched them. In fact, I think they're all on Screambox now, which is Bloody Disgusting's like streaming service that they're involved in if they didn't just outright own it. But yeah, so they're doing a fourth movie, which is a prequel to the other films. So, director Stephen Cognetti announced on Twitter over the weekend that filming of Hell House LLC Origins, The Carmichael Manor, is officially underway. In the first chapter of what will become known as the Hell House LLC Origin films, which is interesting because it means they're planning on doing multiple prequels. It's been a little while, so I don't remember exactly the lore that was set up in those movies, but I'm assuming that means that there's like multiple ghosts and shit inside Hell House, and these movies are all going to look at each sort of individual one or something. But anyway, so a group of cold case investigators stay at the Carmichael Manor, site of the grisly and unsolved murders of the Carmichael family back in the 80s. After 4 nights, the group was never heard from again. What is discovered on their footage is even more disturbing than anything found on the Hell House tapes. That to me just says, yeah, it's even scarier than the last movies. Like, it's going to be even more extreme. I mean, I'm down to check it out. The Hell House movies aren't like, yeah, they're not amazing. They're not stuff that I would say you have to rush out and see, but they're decent enough romps for what they are. I remember liking the second one the most of the three. They don't have that high a ceiling, but they don't bottom out too much either. They're kind of pretty reasonable streaming movies. I would describe them as. So it's interesting though, because they're obviously quite cheap to make, that we're probably going to keep getting them for a long time. The fact that they're kind of phrasing this almost like it's the start of an Origins trilogy or something like that is quite interesting. So, by all means, milk away. I'm not going to resist. I have to pick my battles. A viral horror story from Reddit, the subreddit No Sleep. It's called Purgatory Games. Is getting a movie adaptation from Lyrical Media. The original story was written by Sam Haysom, Bryce Edward Hill, who worked on Ash vs. Evil Dead. And I want to say he's also written comic books that I've read, because I recognize that name. Is going to adapt it. So cool. In Purgatory Games, when a mysterious narrator receives a USB drive from an unknown source containing videos and transcripts of 6 strangers trapped in an underground bunker with unusual rules to gain their freedom, sounds a little Saw, an investigation begins into the secret, disturbing experiment. The project has been billed as Ring meets Squid Game. Okay, that's interesting. All right. I got Saw vibe initially, but I can see the Squid Game comparison. And the Ring I get, I suppose, because you're looking at it from this perspective of like getting these clues about this thing that happened after the fact, rather than following the story of this like demented game throughout the story, in chronological order. So maybe you'll get snippets of it as the movie progresses or something like that. It is kind of weird though to see stories from Reddit getting adapted into movies now, but that's just kind of where we are. That said though, if the idea is good enough and you get a good writer working on it, then I suppose why not? An idea is an idea regardless of where it comes from. So next up, we got a film called Never Let Go. It was originally called Motherland. It had previous news reportings about that last year. But this is from director Alexander Aja, who did High Tension / Switchblade Romance, the Hills Have Eyes remake, and Piranha 3D. So kind of a weird assortment of horror movies under his belt already. In fact, did he do Crawl as well? I think he might have done. It's not listed here, but I think he did Crawl. Which I actually quite like that one. So yeah, Never Let Go is his next film. But they've cast Halle Berry in this, so instantly my interest is plummeted. So Percy Daggs the Fourth, who'd worked on The Last Days of Ptolemy Gray, and Anthony B. Jenkins will star alongside her in the film. The upcoming Lionsgate horror film follows a mother and her fraternal twin sons, that played by Daggs and Jenkins, who have been tormented by an evil spirit for years and are convinced to never let go of their family's protective bond. But when one of the boys questions if the evil is real, their connection is severed, triggering a terrifying fight for survival. It's tough to get super excited for this for me for a couple of reasons. One, Halle Berry's not a good actress, so that's like an instant no. But also, like, other than the sort of like we have to stay together and that'll protect us from the evil part of it, it sounds like it's probably just going to turn into a pretty generic haunted house / possession movie, right? There's going to be an evil spirit or maybe a series of evil spirits doing spooky stuff. So without a director that really excites me, and again, Aja has done a couple of decent to good things, but obviously a couple of weaker things as well. It's hard to get super pumped for that. It doesn't sound like a gimmick or a story concept that leaps off the pages. Oh, that sounds like a fun time. Whereas Alligators in a Hurricane sounds like a fun, or Trapped in a House during a hurricane and flood with an alligator sounds like instantly like, okay, I get that. I get why it's fun. This on paper just sounds like it could be any generic haunting movie, effectively. So, we'll see. But admittedly, it's a subgenre of horror that I'm particularly sick of, so it does take a little bit more to get me jazzed up for it. Next up, Jenny Slate, who was recently in Everything Everywhere All at Once, and of course, many might know her from Parks and Recreation. She's going to lead a cast and executive produce a horror movie called Mindful, about a possessed meditation app that begins to kill its followers. In Mindful, when her husband shockingly dies while meditating on the Mindful app, Angela, deeply suspicious of the new wellness craze, uncovers supernatural forces that have fused with the technology. As the app's popularity spreads like wildfire, she is forced to confront her own demons and dive into a terrifying out-of-body experience in order to save the one she loves. That sounds a lot like that Countdown movie, which I guess is just a new subgenre, phone app horror. Which I suppose in many ways is just like a different way to spread a virus. It's literally a computer virus essentially on a phone that's supernatural and spooky. Uh, like eventually there'll probably be a really good one, and it'll be kind of like The Ring, where it's like, oh, this used a type of technology in a way that really worked and was creepy, but it's hard to read that and not think that sounds a bit lame. Because that movie was pretty lame. Well, I remember much of it now, admittedly. It was very, very forgetful. I watched it on stream, I don't know, probably 4 years ago at this point. I forget. The problem with not having a co-host is that there's no like natural time for me to, pause and take a drink. Like usually I have someone else talking to deal with that stuff. So forgive me, everyone, for taking a moment to lubricate the pipes a little bit. So what we got next? Bluefinch Films, which is a UK-based sales and distribution, have gotten the rights, excluding Australia and New Zealand, because that's where it comes from. So they've basically got the international rights outside of its country of origin, to a Australian horror film called You'll Never Find Me. It's a debut from Indiana Bell and Josiah Allen. The film will have its world premiere as part of the Midnight section at Tribeca 2023. Umbrella Entertainment holds the rights in Australia and New Zealand. Billed as sharp and twisted horror tale, the film follows an isolated man living at the back of a desolate caravan park, where he is visited by a desperate young woman seeking shelter from a violent storm. As the savage storm worsens, the solitary souls begin to feel threatened, but who should really be afraid? So I don't know if they're doing something where she ends up being the villain, or maybe he's dangerous and she's ended up in an even worse situation for herself. Yeah, hard to say. And obviously this is a debut, so I mean the premise sounds fine. I love a horror movie set in a storm. It's a simple little box to tick for me, but it does please me so. But yeah, it's a debut talent, so there's nothing to go on yet, other than just to hope that it's a exciting new talent. So hopefully it is good. So maybe want to keep an eye on. Next up, Ben Cosgrove and Josh Foer's Leviathan Productions has tapped Daniel Handler, the author behind a series of unfortunate events. So you're probably thinking, wait a minute, that was Lemony Snicket. Lemony Snicket was a pseudonym. It wasn't his real name. So yes, Daniel Handler is going to write a new horror movie based on a legend from Jewish folklore. The Golem legend? I'm saying Golem instead of Gollum because it's only one L, but someone could correct me and tell me I'm mispronouncing that. Golem, Golem. I've never heard of this myself. Considered the Jewish Frankenstein, the Golem story is one of the most enduring legends from Jewish tradition and has been the subject of numerous books and plays. The film updates the story, which first appeared in 15th century Prague, to the present day, where a young woman on a college campus finds herself terrorized by a creature with a mysterious past. This is sounding like Jewish Leprechaun. I'm not gonna lie. That's what I'm getting from this. I don't know what the Golem is going to look like, but I'm getting Jewish Leprechaun vibes from this. And maybe it'll be much more serious than that. But the fact that they've got the writer of a series of unfortunate events writing it makes me think it won't be like super serious. It sounds like it might be not a kids movie, but I mean, it sounds like it's going to veer towards, I don't know, like a dark whimsy, perhaps. I maybe I'm wrong though. Maybe he'll write a completely hardcore horror movie. I don't know, but that's my gut instinct based on that name. That said, though, I did really like the Netflix series of A Series of Unfortunate Events. So that's something. Next up, Hulu is bringing another original horror movie out. It's called Jagged Mind, and it is going to premiere at the American Black Film Festival in June. It's going to then debut on Hulu on June 15th this year. Maisie Richardson Sellers from Legends of Tomorrow and Shannon Woodward from Westworld star in Jagged Mind. A woman is plagued by blackouts and strange visions that lead her to discover she's stuck in a series of time loops, possibly related to her mysterious new girlfriend. Admittedly, that sounds a little more sci-fi just from that description, but this was billed as a horror movie in the news articles, so it's in the horror section. So I'm intrigued. I mean, I know both of those actors, because I watched a fair bit of Legends and, I watched the first 3 seasons of Westworld. They're both decent enough. Neither one was bad on their shows, so interested to see them in different roles. So this is a 20th Digital Studio production with Hulu. Kelly Kali directed it, who's not a name I know, but it's based on one of her own shorts. So, I mean, again, not a whole lot to go on. Sometimes they like to keep these mysterious and vague sounding, just a little bit of a taste and no more. So hard to get a read on it quite yet, but Hulu have put a couple of interesting smaller horror movies the last few years. Fresh was them. I didn't love No Exit, but that I think Tim liked that a bit more than I did. So they have been putting out some of these smaller movies. Maybe because they've got like some of what used to be Fox making them now. Maybe that's a continued, and Prey if you want to count that. I wouldn't necessarily put that in the horror section though. But I mean that was, I assume, at least started as a theatrical movie in development, and then obviously things changed when Fox got purchased. But hey, so that wraps up the horror section. We'll get into some more general movie stuff, and we'll see what's going on here. First up, Killers of the Flower. I'll say that again. Killers of the Flower Moon, which is Martin Scorsese's next movie. It's coming out this October, and it's going to Apple TV Plus later, but not first. I think it's going to theaters first, and then it's going to Apple TV worldwide sometime later. But the news this week is that we finally have an official run time for it, which wouldn't be big news, except that for a while it was rumored that it was going to be like 4 hours long. It's still very long, but it's not 4 hours long. The official runtime is 3 hours and 26 minutes. And you could probably assume close to 10 minutes of credits on that bad boy. So that cuts it down a little considerably from what was rumored for some time. And I know it's something that me and David have been paying attention to, because depending on how a vote goes in the next month or two, we might be doing this when it comes out on Collector's Cut. So again, just a little inside behind the curtains stuff here for you. Scorsese, David Fincher, and Ridley Scott all have new movies coming out very close to each other. So we'll be doing a season on one of those directors based on a vote. So if it's Scorsese, we'll be doing this movie. Assuming this is always a caveat here. Assuming that both the US and the UK get it at the same time, we probably will. It's a Paramount movie, but sometimes, especially with these movies that might be award-worthy, sometimes you get weird delays on them internationally for some reason. But yeah, so that's Killers of a Flower Moon. Next up, we have some casting for David Cronenberg's next movie. Now, this might be a kind of a horror movie. I wasn't really sure where to put it, so I just put it here since Cronenberg's name on his own is big enough to just kind of carry it. But this is called The Shrouds, and it already had Guy Pearce, Vincent Cassel, and Diane Kruger, but we've also added Sandrine Holt, who had a small role in Mr. Robot. It mentions here she's going to be in Daredevil Born Again, but she's popped up in a few things the last few years. But so yeah, this is in production, or it's about to start production in Toronto. Stars Vincent Cassel as Karsh, an innovative businessman and grieving widower who builds a novel device to connect with the dead inside a burial shroud. The burial tool installed in his own state-of-the-art, though controversial, cemetery allows him and his clients to watch their specific departed loved ones decompose in real time. Carsey's revolutionary business is on the verge of breaking into international mainstream when several graves within his cemetery are vandalized and nearly destroyed, including that of his wife. While he struggles to uncover a clear motive for the attack, the mystery of who wrought this havoc and why drive him to reevaluate his business, marriage, and fidelity to his late wife's memory, as well as push him to new beginnings. So definitely sounds like it's pushing some provocative boundaries, which is exactly what I'd expect from David Cronenberg. Sandrine Holt joining the cast isn't like a big story, but I just felt like it's the first episode of this news show. I felt like I should probably bring up this Cronenberg movie and just talk about what it is a little bit. It sounds interesting though. And Cronenberg's got a few misses for me, but he hits more than he misses for sure. And I really liked his last movie. Crimes of the Future I thought was really, really good. So I'm down. Amazon Studios has acquired Brian Otting's script. It's called Never Too Old to Die, and it's going to be a movie for Sylvester Stallone to headline. It's an action comedy produced by Stallone and Braden Aftergood for Balboa Productions, which I think Stallone's got an overall deal, first look deal with Amazon Studios right now. But yeah, it's about a mysterious murder within a retirement home for spies, and it sparks a Cold War hero's personal mission to find the assassin living among them. I actually think this sounds... Admittedly, it being an action comedy, I'm not so sure about. Like, the comedy part throws me a little, but I do kind of like the premise on its own. I suppose in some ways it makes me think of Bubba Hotep, which was a horror comedy. You know, that was lighthearted, but that was Bruce Campbell pretending to be Elvis. So that inherently had to be a little bit more, you know, jovial and silly and stuff. But the idea of this like old man Stallone in a retirement home, and he's kind of past his prime, but he's like determined to find whoever the old person assassin is that's kicking around, that's killed his friend. Like I actually think that sounds kind of cool. I have no idea, like, you know, I don't even mention who a director is here, so I have no idea what the quality level is going to be like. But I see potential in this. I see potential in Old Man Stallone, sort of having one last hurrah, when maybe no one in the staff take them seriously or anything like that, because it's just all the old people complaining. They're just all crazy. They think there's some conspiracies going on, but it's really just, you know, simple, straightforward stuff. I could see there being something like that. But it sounds fun, regardless. So, cool. And then we got, after that, we have some Fast and the Furious news. Basically just confirming that the director of Fast 10, or Fast X, however you want to put it, Louis Leterrier, is going to return for the final film, number 11, which I actually thought was further along. I thought they shot 10 and 11 back to back, but apparently not, because he's just been hired to direct the 11th one, effectively. So I was right though in my memory of thinking that 11 and 10 are kind of tied together, because it even says here, not much is known about the 11th main installment in the series, but it's been described as a companion piece to Fast 10. So yeah, in my head it was always kind of this two-parter. So maybe it's not so much a two-parter, but they're definitely close to the length, because it's always been described as them as a pair. But yeah, so not much to say here really. Yeah, I you know, Fast 10's not out yet. I probably won't see it until 11's coming out. We're doing a season on collector's cut of the first 5. We've actually finished recording all those now, to tie in with the release of the new one, but we didn't have time to do all, you know, 9 plus Hobbs and Shaw to get to the new one, because we had Indiana Jones coming, and we had to do John Wick not too long ago. You know, we had too many other franchises kind of needing to be done around it. But we'll get to whenever the 11th one's coming out. We'll get to the rest of them on the run up to that. But yeah, so is this good news? I don't know. We'll see if the reviews for Fast 10 are any good. But there you go. Next up, we have a little bit of casting for Venom 3. Juno Temple, who's basically known right now for Ted Lasso. She also had a really small role in Dark Knight Rises, actually. But she is in talks to star in Venom 3 along with Tom Hardy in what is being described as a lead role. Not the lead role, because that's obviously Tom Hardy, but I don't know if she's going to be the new female lead. I don't know. I never saw Venom 2. I don't know if Michelle Williams' character bought it or what, but yeah. So Kelly Marcel is taking over directing duties for the third film. I didn't like the first Venom. I didn't enjoy it even in the so bad it's good way that a lot of people seem to do. You know, people seem to like it ironically. I did not. So I never saw Venom 2. But there you go. I do think Juno Temple is quite good in Ted Lasso, though. So if this is the start of her getting bigger movie roles, then cool. But nothing exciting for me there, I don't think, on a personal level. Next up, Legendary set an all-star cast for its forthcoming film Animal Friends, combining live-action and animated characters from writing duo Kevin Burrows and Matt Maider. So you've got Ryan Reynolds, you got Jason Momoa, you got Vince Vaughn, and you got Aubrey Plaza all joining the cast of this, which is an interesting set of people. Aubrey Plaza is probably the best and most interesting one there. I feel like Ryan Reynolds and Vince Vaughn and Jason Momoa are all just kind of like, they always kind of just do themselves. I suppose, I mean, Aubrey Plaza kind of does like the moody character a lot, but I feel like she's had better examples of like more dramatic acting. Whereas the others, like Jason Momoa just always plays Jason Momoa. Even in Dune, he's just Jason Momoa in an outfit. So, and given it's a live action / animated, like, you know, adventure, was it? Plot details are under wraps, so we don't know what it's about, but we know it's going to be an R-rated road trip adventure. So, if I was a betting man, and I'm not, but if I was, I would say that Ryan Reynolds will be doing his Ryan Reynolds shtick, that Jason Momoa will be doing his Jason Momoa shtick, and then Vince Vaughn will be doing his typical Vince Vaughn shtick. It feels like this doesn't feel like something where they're all going to be challenging themselves with a more dramatic role. And arguably, I think Ryan Reynolds and Vince Vaughn have both done that at times in the past. But I don't think this is going to be one of those times, just based on that very, very slim description we got. Oh, another Parks and Rec person next. Aziz Ansari is making his directorial debut with a movie called Good Fortune at Lionsgate. He's also writing it, and he's also going to star in it, alongside Keanu Reeves and Seth Rogen. Well, he's definitely getting some names for his first movie then, I suppose. So they're launching sales for this at the Cannes Festival next month, and it'll start shooting around then as well, in LA. So they're keeping the story for this secret, but that's some names, you know. I don't really like Seth Rogen, so I'm not exactly excited by him, but Keanu Reeves, no one's mad at Keanu Reeves being around. No one ever is. That's okay. All right. 2-time Emmy nominee Rebecca Sonnenschein from The Boys. I've seen The Boys. Oh, she's a writer. I was trying to think of who she might have played, but sorry, she wrote stuff on The Boys. She is going to write a feature adaptation of Frida McFadden's best-selling novel The Housemaid for Lionsgate. It's a psychological thriller unveiled by Grand Central Publishing last April, which has remained on the Amazon bestsellers list for almost a year. It follows a struggling woman who is relieved when she gets to start afresh as a housemaid to an upscale wealthy couple. Soon, however, she finds herself falling for the kind of attractive husband. Oh, sorry, kind and attractive, not kind of attractive. I thought that was oddly dismissive. Like, yeah, he's not that attractive, but she's kind of desperate. So, no, kind and attractive husband. From behind closed doors, she sees everything and soon learns that the Winchester's secrets are far more dangerous than her own. Is this a supernatural spin-off, a stealth supernatural movie? Probably not. Probably not. But I mean, there's not a whole bunch I can say about this really. I obviously I like The Boys, so maybe the writer here is quite good. It's hard to say, but you know, it sounds a little bit trashy as well. You know, I can kind of see the trailer in my head of like the, oh, she's starting to fall for this man, but maybe him and his wife are really dangerous. They've got secrets. You know, I can see the sort of sleazy 90s thriller trailer that this might or could have. It probably would. It'll probably have a very modern trailer, but I can see the old school trailer that it would have. Next up, following an intense bidding war, Warner Brothers has landed a package deal for Maude v. Maude, with Oscar winners Angelina Jolie and Halle Berry attached to star. Halle Berry's getting a lot of stuff this week. What's going on? I don't approve. Roseanne Liang will board to direct from Scott Moiser's script. The two actors will be producing. Plot details have been kept under wraps, but it's been described as Bond versus Bourne. It is a global action thriller with locations to be announced. I can't say the idea of a spy versus spy movie with Angelina Jolie and Halle Berry has me that thrilled. Halle Berry, like I said already, I don't think is very good. And while I don't necessarily think Angelina Jolie's bad, like, she's not exactly had a good track record with movies, has she? I mean, what has she been in that's good? She was in... What was that movie? She was in like an esteemed movie in the 90s. Was that Girl Interrupted or something like that? Like people... I never saw that, but people seem to like that. I kind of enjoy Gone in 60 Seconds, but that's a Nick Cage movie that also has Angelina Jolie in it. Like, what's she been in since that's any good? Anything? She was in The Tourist with Johnny Depp. No one saw that. Mr. and Mrs. Smith. That was pretty bland. I don't know. Like I feel like, you know, the Tomb Raider movies. See, nothing but trash. Yeah. The Curving the Bullets one. Didn't like that either. So I don't know. I'm not feeling this team in any way. Who knows? Maybe it'll be the movie that, you know, changes my mind on both of them. I don't know, but for me, this is a pretty like write off for now type movie. So, pardon me. Patriot Pictures and XYZ Films have brought on Wayward Entertainment to release Nick Cassavetes' action thriller God is a Bullet. Micah Monroe, Nicolaj Coster-Waldau, Carl Glusman, January Jones, Paul Johansson, David Thornton, and Jamie Foxx are all in this movie. That was a hell of a list of names. Micah Monroe, you might know her as the lead from It Follows. That's where I know her from. Nicolaj, whatever his name, he's from Game of Thrones, and obviously Jamie Foxx. You'll know. So yeah, this is going to have a wide domestic release on June 23rd, and then a month later it'll get a digital release in July. So God is a Bullet follows Detective Bob Hightower, who finds his ex-wife murdered and his daughter kidnapped by an insidious cult. Hightower takes matters into his own hands and infiltrates the secretive cult to try and save his daughter. With the help of the cult's only female victim escapee, Case Harden, Hightower and Harden go down the rabbit hole with the ferryman to save his daughter and find closure for Harden from this cult and its maniacal leader. This sounds like such trash. I don't know. I'm getting nothing but trashy from this. And again, like, you know, execution's everything. This could actually be a thrilling, like super intense movie or something. But I'm getting taken with a cult, and despite having a couple of notable cast names, I don't know. I feel like I'm. Maybe it's because Nicolaj Coster-Waldau. I don't know if I buy him as the leading man as maybe part of it, but just the idea of him infiltrating a cult and dealing with some lunatic. I don't know. I'm getting like super trashy vibes from it, but if you're interested in that, if that sounds good, then well, good for you. Congratulations. Have a good time. Mm. And it's just tacked on at the end here, inspired by true events and based on the novel of the same name, written by Boston Teran. So usually when it's a true story, they'll say that up front. Like they'll really hammer that home. It's kind of weird that they just tacked on at the end there. All right. Next up, we've got a film coming called Everything's Going to Be Great. We have director John S. Baird working on it. It's a new film that is being put into production in the Toronto area. Sorry, the start of this article's worded very awkwardly. I'm just trying to navigate it. So, a couple of notable cast members in this, though. We got Bryan Cranston, we got Alison Janney, Benjamin Evan Ainsworth are all in here. That last name was someone who was in Haunting of Bly Manor, and then Jack Champion from Avatar: Way of the Water are here. Obviously, you know who Bryan Cranston is. I don't have to tell you that. I don't have to insult you by telling you who Bryan Cranston is. So it's called Everything's Going to Be Great. The film, written by the I, Tonya's Stephen Rogers, is billed as a Valentine to big dreamers whose dreams won't necessarily come true. It's about individuality versus conformity, fantasy versus reality, but mostly it's about family. Oh, is this a Fast and the Furious spin-off? As the smart family moves from one state to the next, they cope with loss and struggle with identity, all while performing in regional theatre. That definitely had some professional and personal lives in there. You don't get it as much in the movies because they're not ongoing versus TV descriptions. But Connor would have to drink for that one. I'm making that clear. Honestly, there's a lot of fruit language there. It doesn't really get into specifics as to like what this family's actually going to go through. It does sound like it's going for kind of a bittersweet title. You know, obviously the title's not meant to be taken literally. It's like they're trying to convince themselves that everything's going to be great. I can also see with maybe like a Little Miss Sunshine style tone. I'm maybe getting a little vibe of that. But again, that's just kind of a hunch more than anything else. But yeah. So that was actually the last bit of news. But we have a couple of segments to wrap up with that will make a regular thing here. Let me move my my document over here. So let's do what I'm going to call the review roundup. I'm going to have a look and just basically see what a bunch of movies that have just started getting reviews are, you know, what the consensus is. Let's see what they're scoring at. I think typically this will probably be the movies that are coming out this weekend, because typically you get an embargo right before, but sometimes they might be a little further advanced, depending. So first up, we have Guy Ritchie's new movie, The Covenant. In fact, the title is Guy Ritchie's The Covenant. This has 63 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes as of right now, and it is at 79%, which is not bad. The consensus reads as follows: a satisfying, well-acted war thriller with a surprising dramatic depths. Guy Ritchie's The Covenant tells a solid story with an impressive restraint. That's interesting. I didn't imagine Guy Ritchie making a war thriller. Obviously, he's known for his gangster movies more than anything else. But this has got Jake Gyllenhaal in it, so something different for Guy Ritchie. So we've got that. The big release for this weekend, of course, is Evil Dead Rise, which has 131 reviews and is sitting at 85%. It is certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. The consensus reads as follows: offering just about everything longtime fans could hope for while still managing to carry the franchise forward. Evil Dead Rise is all kinds of groovy. I actually saw this today already, so I already have an opinion, which I'm not going to tell you about in case there's a screams. If Tim can go and see it, we might be able to record the screams for it soon. Otherwise, it'll be waiting until like October. But so I'm going to keep quiet. But yeah, that's the big. I think in our circles, the big new release of the week is Evil Dead Rise. But no, this was getting early buzz, a good buzz about a month ago because it had some premieres at a festival or whatever, and it got really good reviews coming out of that, and it's just been kind of maintaining that ever since. It was actually sitting at like 95% for a while, so it's dropped a bit, but obviously 85 for a horror movie is still very respectable. So no, very good. Next up, also out this week, we have To Catch a Killer, starring Shailene Woodley. This has 32 reviews so far, and it is sitting at 44%. So, our first potential stinker by the looks of it. There's no consensus yet. It doesn't have enough reviews for a consensus, which kind of tells you enough on its own. The movie's coming out this weekend, and it doesn't have enough reviews for that, because they have to hit so many reviews before you get that, I think. So I guess I'll just scroll down and see what some of the blurbs say. Its ambitions overwhelm its abilities. Directors are unable to put personality, verve, or distinction into Catch a Killer. The first half hour To Catch a Killer is outstanding, and then it gradually, consistently goes downhill. Well, that's quite specific. Obviously, there are some positive reviews. One seems to be praising the visuals. But, I mean, even the title sounds like a really generic thriller, and perhaps that's maybe just what it is. But yeah, so I didn't even know what this was until I was looking for what the new movies coming out were this week. Beau is Afraid is next. It's another one that's obviously anticipated because of Ari Aster, who is well loved for his previous films, starring Joaquin Phoenix. This has got 141 reviews and is sitting at 70%, which is pretty good. Not like absurdly high, but I'm not surprised that it's maybe a little divisive, just because of the type of films he has. Does it have a consensus? It does. Beau is Afraid is overstuffed to the point of erasing the line between self-flagellation and self-indulgence. But Ari Aster's bravura. I feel like I know this word, I just can't say it. Bravura. And Joaquin Phoenix's sheer commitment give this neurotic odyssey undeniable power. So it sounds like it's a bit of a indulgent, like, director's movie. But I mean, given that his last movie was pretty long as well, I'm not surprised. I assume this has a long runtime. 2 hours and 59 minutes. It's 3 hours long. So brace yourself. This is not out everywhere. This is not out in the UK. It's for another month or so or something like that. So I cannot comment on it for some time, but there you go. And then we have a streaming release this weekend that's notable because it's got Ana de Armas and Chris Evans in it, and that's a movie called Ghosted. That has 60 reviews and is sitting at 32% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's pretty rough. That's that's quite low. The consensus reads as follows: listlessly wafting between action, comedy, and romance without ever solidifying into a satisfying whole, Ghosted earns a chorus of boos. Some of these consensuses are just kind of like, fruity with their dialogue, aren't they? Yeah, this is one of these ones that kind of come out of nowhere, even though it's got big stars in it. Like, Chris Evans is obviously a huge star at this point. Ana de Armas is kind of rising and on the way up. She's known for a couple of things. And it just kind of, like, out of nowhere existed. Adrian Brody's also in it. If that excites anyone. I don't think it excites me very much, but yeah. All you might get from this movie is a little pick me up before you ghost it forever. Critics love to put in the mean blurb, don't they, when they have a chance. This is Apple TV. This is coming out on. Does not sound like it's worth your time. Maybe you can put it on while you're doing laundry or something, but that's ghosted. Which leads to our final segment, which is the box office segment. So, two parts to this. Part one, I will look at last weekend's box office and just tell you what it was, what the results were. There's always time for a top 10 of some kind. So number one last weekend was the Super Mario Brothers movie, with 92 million. So this is domestic US, of course. For some of these, I will sort of give you an update on the worldwide because they're relevant, obviously. But 92 million on its second weekend is very good. Like, that is absurdly good. And what's especially notable is that is only a 36.9% drop from the first weekend. That is an outstanding hold. Like, so many big movies plummet 60 to 70%, and that's pretty normal when they've got a big opening. Like, I mean, it's actually been getting even worse recently with Marvel movies, but even the Marvel movies that did really well consistently still dropped like over 60% for a lot of their second weekends. That was just, you open so big that first weekend, there's no way you can maintain that again. So 37% drop is very good for the Mario Bros. Movie. And obviously that's doing very well worldwide. It's, as of right now on Box Office Mojo, at 720 million. Get into its third weekend. So pretty comfortably that's going to cross the billion. Just a question of how far it gets beyond that. So very good. Number two was a new entry, and that is The Pope's Exorcist, which debuted with 9 million. This looked pretty bad from the trailer, and all I've heard from people who have seen it is that it's very bad and kind of laughable in places. There's one photo I keep seeing with Russell Crowe in his outfit, his priest outfit, riding a moped, and it makes me laugh every time I see it. So yeah, that was your new entry at number two. Number three was John Wick Chapter 4 with 8 million. And its fourth weekend, which ain't too bad for a fourth weekend. Let's have a look at the worldwide for that. So that's made 352 million worldwide so far, which is pretty respectable. I think that's more than the previous films in the franchise. So very nice. Number four was a new entry. That was Renfield, which looked terrible, and everything I've heard about it sounds terrible. So that debuted with also 8 million. Like, the difference between John Wick 4 and Renfield is like $20,000. It's not much. But yeah, so that's not opened huge, shall we say. Number 5 was Air. The movie about the Michael Jordan shoes. That's 7.8 million in its second weekend. Number 6 is Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves. I've been speaking too long. 7.5 million. So you can tell all of these are really close. After number 1, there's a huge drop off, and then a lot of these are very, very close. That's that movie's third weekend, and that is a sort of big budget, sort of blockbustery type movie. How's that doing worldwide? 160 million so far worldwide after 3 weeks. I don't think that's an amazing take, right? That sounds like it's maybe not like outright bombed, but it doesn't sound like it's a hit at that amount, I would say, because I can't imagine it costs less than 100 million to make. Probably even more than that, just based on the trailers. I don't see a budget here though, on its box office page, so I don't know for sure. Maybe the budget's unknown, but yeah. So that was number 6. Number 7 was a new entry called Suzumi. Number 8 was a new entry of Mafia Mama, which is the Toni Collette comedy, which it debuted at number 8 with 2 million. That's not a lot. So clearly it's not a big hit. Number 9 was Scream 6 and its 6th weekend. So that's not too shabby, I guess, for 6 weekends. That's made $167 million. Comparably, though, to the Dungeons and Dragons movie, Scream 6 would have been much cheaper to make. And for a horror movie, an R-rated horror movie, that's pretty good. And probably means you're getting Scream 7 pretty reliably. So look forward to that. And then number 10, just to wrap out the top 10, is Nefarious with 1.3 million. That was also a new entry. So there you go. And just, I'm going to go and check. I'm just curious. Number 15 was Shazam Fury of the Gods in its fifth weekend. This movie has bombed pretty hard. It's made 132 million worldwide in 5 weeks, which for a superhero movie, particularly in this day and age, is quite dire. So I was just curious what that was at. And it's already available on streaming and stuff, so it's done. So yeah, very cool. All right, well, the last thing I'm going to do then is look at what's coming out this week, and hopefully looking at the consensus for some of those movies will help me make some guesses, and I should write these down, I suppose. So I won't guess for every movie, but I think I'll guess the opening weekend for Evil Dead Rise, certainly. I think essentially what I'm going to do is just guess what I think will be number one. Well, will it be number one? I could see Evil Dead Rise doing well, but still being number two because Mario's still, gobbling up the box office. So maybe I'll guess for both Mario and Evil Dead Rise then, since I think those are the two that are competing. It's just tough. So Mario did 92 million or whatever it was we just said. I'm going to say it's more likely to drop a bit steeper this week, but maybe not terrible. I'm going to say Mario will do about 45 million, which is just over 50% drop, which would be very respectable. Would be a great third weekend. I could see that a little bit more. I could see maybe hitting 50, but I'm going to say 45 million. So Mario, 45 million, and we'll see how I do with these next week when we come back. For Evil Dead Rise, horror movies don't open huge, right? And I don't necessarily think it's going to beat Mario, because if Mario is going to come in at 40 plus million, I don't think Evil Dead is going to do that. But I could see Evil Dead Rise doing well. I think I'm going to I want to say 20, but I still think 20 might be too high. I'll tell you what, I will go with a weirder number. I'll say 17 million for Evil Dead Rise. It's really hard to judge horror movies, and that would probably be fine for it. That's not a bad opening for a movie like Evil Dead Rise. That said, though, if I am way too low, I will, I'll be happy enough with that. If it ends up coming at 25 or something, then cool. I still think Mario takes number one, though, because Mario, I think, even if Mario has a steep drop, it'll probably still do at least 30 million. So I don't think Evil Dead Rise is going to compete with that. So that would be my guess. Especially since you have The Covenant from Guy Ritchie, you have Beau is Afraid, which is more limited, I guess, but you've got a few things that are going to eat at the R-rated crowd a little bit. So, keep that in mind. But, yeah. So there we go. That is the first episode of this new movie news show, which hopefully people will get used to this being a thing each week, and maybe look forward to it, and we can see what's going on. But hopefully some of this was interesting or entertaining, at the very least informative would be good. But that'll wrap up this first episode. Thank you for watching live, anyone who has been. Of course, you can support everything over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. And I suppose the only other thing I should probably say is what's coming up in the movie channel in the next little bit. So tomorrow on Saturday, assuming you're watching this the day it goes out live, we have Super Mario Brothers 93 on Collector's Cut. On Sunday, you'll have a new Ace with Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. And then next week, Alien Day is hitting, so you'll have another Ace with Alien Resurrections. So a few bits of content going out over the next several days. Look forward to all that. But hope you had a good time. I will see you guys soon. Thank you very much for joining me. It has been a pleasure. And keep watching movies. I don't have like an outro line prepared for this, so goodbye and